video we will cover handing out copies and grouping within a SmartAmp workspace. Now, grouping students is extremely important, especially when you are differentiating instruction. Let's begin by talking about how you can group students within one SmartAmp workspace. If you think of your workspace in terms of quadrants, you can easily break the workspace into multiple sections. You can use shapes to do this and group the students into 4, 5, 6, however many groups you'd like. Or you can also use the lines or drawing pen. Remember, you can quickly clone the line by clicking the down arrow. Once I've created my groups or my spaces for my groups, I can go into a closer look and I can bookmark them. You can see how this was done in a workspace for guided reading. Now you can see a lot of stuff has happened in this workspace, and in fact all 20 of my students have at some point been in this workspace. But I've been able to differentiate by grouping using the bookmark feature. So if I go in, I can go exactly to my specific guided reading groups and go find the text that they are reading and the text that they have annotated. You could do something similar by adding text or math groups or whatever you need for your class and bookmarking this space just right here. Now, no matter where I am on the workspace, if I'm in group 1 and I click on this bookmark, it will take me right to this region of the workspace. A use case for grouping students within the same AMP workspace might be when you want to have students complete different lessons or activities and monitor it all within the same time, but work in groups or work individually even. Perhaps you have a PDF that you want to add to the workspace, and only a specific group of students are going to be completing this PDF. You can add this PDF to the workspace, and then the students who are in that group 1 would be completing that PDF together, or maybe individual students are all working on a workspace and only that one student is completing the PDF while another student is working on something over here or a problem over here. The idea is to simply keep it organized with bookmarks. If you want one particular student in the class or one particular group to be working on this PDF, then you can bookmark this PDF for that student. Now let's say as a teacher you've worked hard to create a lesson on an AMP workspace. Now you want to pass this lesson out to multiple groups. But instead of all the students in the class working on the same workspace, you want to give them a copy of the workspace you've created. So let's take a look at handing out copies. By clicking the sharing button on the left, you can click hand out copies right here. I can hand out copies to individual students, just like in Google Classroom. Or I can hand out copies to new groups of students. Let's take a look at both. For individual students, we will actually make a copy of this workspace for every student in the class. I can select students to not give this copy to by unchecking their name. If I want to give students in the class a chance to collaborate, then I can do new groups. By clicking next, I can fill groups randomly and let the computer decide, or I can clear this set of groups and I can individually make the groups myself. Once I've finished making all of my groups, I will hand out the copies. You'll find this process much more enjoyable than waiting in line at the copy machine. And don't forget, by handing out copies, the original workspace stays the same. Once the copies are made, each group will have their own workspace to collaborate on. In this case, only these 3 students and myself have access to this workspace. Any annotations or changes they make can be seen by them and by me. Let's backtrack for a minute to the step where you created the copies that you've just handed out. That if you want to quickly bring your students into the copy you've just made for them, you can check this button right here. When the students have AMP open on their device, it will automatically drag them into the new copy that you've just created. You can also allow students to see copies of the other students or groups in the class. For instance, if I want Group 1 to be able to see Group 2's workspace, I would have to check this button right here. Let's take a look at what copies looks like from your dashboard. Right here you can see that I have 2 volume workspaces. One is my master copy. This is the copy that I used to create this lesson. Now I've handed out copies to my flexible math groups. If I click right here, I can go into those copies and choose which group's workspace I'd like to check out. As a teacher, I often use the original workspace as my whole group or home base. This is where I might model processes for students or for the whole class. And if I don't want my students to mess up this workspace, I won't give them editing rights, I will just give them view access. You can actually display this page up on your board for students, up on your board or class display for students, and then when it comes time to regroup back together as a whole group, you might model and show what specific groups in the class did. If I do plan to let students work on a workspace that I've spent a lot of time creating, I always save myself a copy first. This can save yourself an untouched copy for next year. In this video, you have learned about handing out copies and grouping students within SmartAmp workspaces.